All right, let's bring in the jury. Yes, Ms. Arias, why don't you come up and take the stand, please? Please be seated. The record will show the presence of the jury, the defendant, and all counsel. Ms. Arias, you are still under oath. Do you understand?
Yes.
You may proceed with direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we do so, we'd be moving to admit Exhibit 428, the recorded phone call between Ms. Arias and Mr. Alexander testified to regarding Mr. Neumeister and just that conversation.
Any objection?
Pursuant to the record, we've made no objection.
Exhibit 428 is admitted.
Good morning, Ms. Arias.
Good morning.
Yesterday, when we spoke, when we ended yesterday, I guess, we were talking about the time you spent. We were just getting into, I guess, the time you spent with Mr. Alexander in Ehrenberg, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Before we get into that a little bit, let me back up. Could you describe the town for Ehrenberg as it was back in October 2006 when you were there?
I don't recall its size, but it was very small. I think there was only 1 or 2 exits maybe, and it's in the middle of the desert. I think it's actually in California, but it's right on the border.
Apart from the midpoint that you described yesterday being a midpoint between you and Mr. Alexander, was there any other particular reason or activity that you were going to go to Ehrenberg?
I was driving out there specifically to hang out with Travis.
But when you got there, there wasn't a particular lake or a particular site, park, or whatever that you were going to go to?
No, not that I was aware of or that we had planned. It's not exactly a tourist destination.
Okay. Now, yesterday you began to tell us about arriving at the hotel room, and I believe your words were making out with Mr. Alexander, right?
Yes.
Okay. If you could just kind of describe for us, and this was within minutes of you arriving, to our understanding?
Yes, it happened pretty quickly.
Okay. Just begin again describing what happened during this makeout session as you describe it.
You mean like in detail?
Yes.
Well, he opened the door for me because he had the room key, and he took my hand and walked me over to the bed, sort of, and kind of pulled me but walked me, and I went willingly, of course. We started kissing. It got a little more intense, a little more passionate, and then soon we were both nude on the bed, and there were certain things that he said that, well, like it's not, I don't know, we didn't have intercourse, so to speak. There was oral sex that weekend, but in that particular day, we did what I guess he called, at that time he called it grinding. So it's kind of like, you know, just being together, but not actually having intercourse. That's something that I guess a lot of Mormons do, but they're not supposed to. There are different terms for it. Like the Provo push, and that's a Mormon implication, because it's in Utah. This is what I learned. So,
Objection, no, when we spoke, she was asked what they did.
I'm sorry.
Okay, besides the grinding and the oral sex, you said you didn't have intercourse during this encounter, this first encounter.
Not vaginal intercourse or the...
Did you have anal intercourse?
No.
Just oral sex?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And this would have been when, to recount for us, was this Thursday evening?
Yesterday I couldn't remember whether it was Thursday or Friday, but I remember it was Thursday because we spent 2 nights there and he had to leave on Saturday.
So you spent Thursday and Friday night together, he left on Saturday?
Yes, we both parted ways on Saturday.
Okay. So, after this first encounter where there was oral sex, and were you giving or receiving the oral sex?
Both.
Okay. After this encounter, what happened? What did you do after this was over?
There wasn't really anything to do for a while. That night we stayed in the room. Eventually went to sleep. He just flipped on the TV and we watched, it might have been Friday night, but we watched some game shows, Deal or No Deal, different things. He was just flipping through the channels.
Did you engage in any more sexual activity on Thursday night?
Not after that.
The next day, you wake up. What do? Do you go out and do something, or what happens?
The next day, we were trying to find some way to spend the day, and the town of Blythe is near Ehrenberg, so we decided to drive to Blythe because there was a small movie theater there, and we watched a movie. We went to Sizzler, got something to eat.
Let me ask you this. Did you engage in any sexual behavior before you went to the movie?
I don't remember.
Did you engage in any sexual behavior after the movie?
Yes.
And what behavior did you engage in?
That was oral sex.
Was this again mutual?
Yes.
You mentioned previously that you saw this as somewhat of a romantic weekend with Travis. Was that what it was turning out to be?
No.
When you weren't engaged in sexual activity, how was he treating you?
He wasn't treating me bad. He just seemed checked out. You know, the whole time we were checked in, he was just kind of distant. We connected, I thought we connected a lot over the phone, and it was different when we were together.
How?
Well, over the phone, we would talk for hours at a time about things, not just about sex, but other things, things of a spiritual nature, and just every subject that you could imagine, pleasant things. And we were discovering things that we had in common in ways we were different. And when we went to Ehrenberg, I was expecting the same kind of energy or connection, but it would just be in person. There wasn't much of a mental or emotional connection like there was on the phone. It was just primarily physical.
What's that?
Primarily physical.
And if you could do us a favor and speak up again, I know
Sorry.
I'm having trouble hearing you. So. At this point in time, were you and Mr. Alexander, would you consider yourselves to be in a relationship?
No, it wasn't anything defined. We were sort of seeing each other, but we were definitely not boyfriend-girlfriend.
How many, well, you said how many sexual interactions did you have with Mr. Alexander over this time in Ehrenberg?
I would say 3. I mean, total, if you just,
Okay. And these were all instances of oral sex?
No, like the first night it was the grinding and the next night was oral sex.
Okay. And what was the third encounter?
It was oral sex also.
Okay.
It was before we left.
Okay. Did he ever express a desire during this weekend to engage in anal sex with you?
Yes.
And did he, over the course of that weekend in Ehrenberg, express a desire to have vaginal sex with you?
No.
But it appears, based on what you told us, you declined his desire to have anal sex. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I didn't. We did not have anal sex.
Okay. In expressing his desire for that, was that something he did repeatedly, or is that something that just came up one time?
It didn't just come up one time. He wasn't overly persistent about it, but it was somewhat repeatedly.
Okay. Apart from going to a movie and out to eat in Blythe, as you just described, what else, and the sexual encounters, what else did you do to pass the time?
Well, we made music CDs, or he made CDs on his computer with his music, some music that he liked that he was making for me. He shared more things from the Book of Mormon with me. What else did we do? Mostly it involved, we weren't in Blythe, he was watching television other than those other two activities.
Now, at this point in time, October 2006, you have received several visits from the missionaries, right? From where you described
Yes.
it? Is that okay?
Yes, by that time.
Had you had occasion to, whether it's through the missionaries, through Mr. Alexander, through church visits, through your own readings, had you ever learned about what we're calling the vow of chastity?
It was
At this point in
mentioned.
time?
It was mentioned to me, not in detail.
And in October of 2006, when you're in Ehrenberg with Mr. Alexander, what was your understanding of that vow?
According to the missionaries, they sort of glossed over it, and they didn't really gloss over it, but...
That's what her understanding was.
Okay, my understanding...
Hold on, wait, sorry. Question.
What was your understanding, not telling us what somebody said to you, but what was your understanding of what the vow meant, what it prohibited?
No premarital sex.
And did you have an understanding of how that was defined within the law? I mean, did it mean no penile vaginal intercourse? Did it mean no kissing. What did that mean to your understanding?
Well, it was explained to me by Travis.
Objection. What is her understanding? That who's telling what?
What was your understanding?
My understanding was that it meant that vaginal sex was off limits and everything else was more or less okay.
And who gave you that understanding?
Travis did.
Now, you talked about departing, both you and Mr. Alexander leaving Saturday morning. Tell us about that.
Saturday morning, we got breakfast at the neighboring truck stop restaurant. Again, there wasn't much connection. There wasn't a lot of conversation. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, what I'm asking you is describe for us the Saturday morning when you left. You said you had breakfast. What happened? Who left first?
Oh, okay. After breakfast, we left at the same time. We checked out, and I took a picture of him. He was in a suit and tie. He had to go to a Super Saturday here in Phoenix. It was one of the regional events in prepaid legal, and he hit the road for from Phoenix, and I went back to Palm Desert.
And how far a drive was Palm Desert from Ehrenberg, as best you can recall?
I want to say 3 hours, maybe, somewhere around that mark.
Okay. Tell us how you felt leaving Ehrenberg that Saturday morning and driving back.
Well, when we parted, there wasn't a lot of affection, so I kind of felt disappointed, not upset, just kind of bummed out a little bit. I don't know, kind of felt stupid.
Stupid how?
I was replaying the weekend, or it was my weekend. I was replaying that weekend, and I kind of wish things had gone a little bit differently.
What do you mean by that?
Maybe just, I wish that we had had more of a connection, a meeting of minds, rather. Well, I didn't dislike the physical part, but it seemed like it was missing an important element.
What important element was it missing?
The emotion and, like I said, just the mental connection, some kind of being on the same page, so to speak.
So you didn't feel, as you were leaving, you didn't feel any kind of emotional connection or like you had grown closer with Mr. Alexander. Is that what you're telling us?
I didn't feel like we'd grown closer. He seemed more distant.
Okay. How did you feel in retrospect about the sexual behavior you engaged in with Mr. Alexander? Do you feel okay? Was it still too far, too soon?
It didn't feel like too much too soon anymore because over that month we had really gotten to know each other very well. I developed feelings for him, and it just seemed, it was confusing though, even though it was a little confusing, the sex.
What do you mean? What was confusing about it?
Well, I guess just where the line should be drawn, I guess.
And what do you mean by line? Your line, the vow of chastity, what kind of line are you speaking of?
Well, to me, sex is sex. There are just different ways to have sex, and it seemed like Travis was kind of It just seemed like he sort of had like the Bill Clinton version, whereas over here it seemed like, oral and anal sex were also sex to me, but not for him.
And the line that you're talking about, that line of demarcation, really sounds like that dealt with the vow of chastity. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
When you were reflecting back on the weekend on your way back to Palm Desert, did you consider your actions, and your own, not his, but your own actions as it relates to that vow of chastity?
I considered it.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, I trusted what I was told by him, so I didn't feel like we were sinning. I felt a little bit, I hate to put it this way, but I felt a little bit used. But I knew I had gone there on my own willingly. So.
What do you mean, though, that you've felt used?
Well, he gets a hotel room, I show up, we hang out, we have sex. He's not really there presently, he's not mentally present. I'm getting a lot of attention, but only while we're engaging in sexual activity, and then we check out and he takes off. And I kind of felt like a prostitute, sort of.
You didn't feel real good about the relationship or how he treated you at that point, right?
I was more upset with myself. I didn't feel like he mistreated me, but I didn't feel like he was treating me as well as he had been for that entire month.
Okay. Do you hear from, you discussed earlier what was seemingly near daily contact with Mr. Alexander on the phone in the evenings. Did you speak with him that Saturday evening when you got back home?
No, I called him later, but he didn't return my call.
Did you hear from him on Sunday?
No, I called him one more time Sunday evening, left a voicemail, and he didn't return my call.
Was that abnormal for him not to return your call?
Maybe one night, not really. I did want to know if he made it home safely. But I wasn't trying to be his mother, but I was concerned about if he made it back safely. Sunday night, he began to call me very late at night by this point. So I would leave a voicemail if I was going to sleep, and sometimes he wouldn't call me back if I told him I had to sleep. Sometimes he would call anyway and wake me up. But by Monday morning, when he had not returned both of my calls,
well, let me back up a step and ask you this. You'd said on Saturday you're driving home, you're feeling used. You call him Saturday night, you don't get a return call. How are you feeling Sunday or about the weekend? Are you feeling the same way? Have your feelings changed on Sunday before?
They hadn't really changed. I was trying not to think about it much or put too much thought into it or overanalyze it.
After feeling the way you did on Saturday when you came back, when you were driving back, and feeling the same way Sunday, why would you want to speak with him at all?
I had feelings for him.
Were you in love with him at that time?
I wouldn't say in love, but I had warm feelings for him, still sort of in the crush realm, but a little stronger, I'd say.
So those feelings for him were more prominent than your feelings for yourself about being used. Is that what you're telling us?
Just reading.
Let me answer.
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
You told us a few moments ago how you felt used as you were driving back from Ehrenberg. But you also told us that you had feelings for Mr. Alexander. and that's why you were reaching out to him on Saturday evening and Sunday evening. What I'm asking you is if your feelings for Mr. Alexander were stronger than your feelings for being used.
Yes, they were.
When you did not hear from him over these 2 days, how did your feelings about being used, did they become stronger? Did they become weaker?
I think I began to think, well, I sent him a text message again on Monday, so by that time he still didn't return any of those 3 attempts. So by that point, I was beginning to think that I had been very stupid and he got what he wanted and he wasn't interested in me anymore.
When you started feeling like stupid and he got what he wanted and he wasn't interested in you anymore, were you then in a position that you wanted to write him off, or were you in a position where you wanted to hear from him?
I can't say really either. I wasn't thinking of writing him off. I think if he was moving on, I would have liked to at least have known,
Okay. When did you get a response, if at all, from Mr. Alexander?
It would have been Tuesday evening. I was at a business briefing and he called during the middle of that, and I didn't hear my phone because it was turned off, or the ringer was turned off. And so I checked afterward and he had called and left me a very nice voicemail.
Did you wind up talking with Mr. Alexander after he left the voicemail?
Yes, I called him after the meeting.
I want to know what he said, but did your conversation with him then make you feel less like you were used when you were in Ehrenberg?
Yes, it was more reassuring. He wasn't reassuring me, but the nature of the call was reassuring to me.
Did you ever express your feelings to him about how you felt used when you were driving home?
No.
What was that?
No.
Why not?
I didn't want to make him feel bad. I also was telling myself that maybe that was just all in my head, and that's, I was misinterpreting it or overanalyzing it, and it wasn't that big of a deal.
So it sounds like after this phone conversation you have on Tuesday, everything is back to status quo in terms of your feelings towards Mr. Alexander. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Do these phone calls we heard about these long spiritual conversations, do they then begin again after this call on Tuesday?
Yes, the same routine, the same subject matters.
And those subject matters being more spiritual, or were they also sexual?
They were spiritual, sexual, and other things.
When do you recall seeing Mr. Alexander next?
I think it was right before Thanksgiving.
Okay. And do you recall the reason for that meeting with him?
He was on his way to Riverside, where he was going to spend Thanksgiving, and Palm Desert is on the way, so he stopped at my house and we hung out for a little while. And then he continued on to Riverside.
Now when were you baptized into the Mormon Church?
November 26th,
So, of what year?
2006.
So this would have been, was this and who baptized you?
Travis baptized me.
This visit you're mentioning, was that when he baptized you, or was this a distinct visit?
No, this was a distinct visit. It was right before Thanksgiving.
Okay. Were you baptized before or after Thanksgiving?
After Thanksgiving, I think was on the 22nd that year. Well, the 26th would have been on a Sunday, so whatever the previous Thursday was.
Okay. This meeting then was at your home in Palm Desert?
Yes, I think it was the day before, on the Wednesday.
Okay. The day before Thanksgiving?
Yes, right before Thanksgiving, so probably Wednesday.
Okay. And where did you wind up meeting him?
He came to my house with his dog.
Was Daryl still living in the house at this time?
I think Daryl was still living in the house, but he was at work.
Okay. So tell us about what happens when he arrives at your home.
Well, this was the first time he had seen my house, so I just walked him around the property briefly. It's not a big property, but he wanted to see the pool. His dog jumped in the pool and sank right to the bottom, so that was scary. I guess pugs don't swim. So he jumped in with his clothes and everything on to save his dog, and I took him and we put him inside so he wouldn't do that again. So Travis was soaking wet at that point, so he took a hot shower because in November the pool is freezing. And I threw his clothes in the dryer so that they would dry off and warm up. And we were intimate again, and then we said goodbye.
You said intimate. How were you intimate?
I don't recall exactly. It would have been oral sex or the grinding. Again, that's all we were doing at that point.
Okay. During this particular encounter, did he again ask you to have anal sex with him?
Yes.
But no anal sex took place on that day?
No, it was more like teasing, and I said no.
After did he ejaculate?
Yes.
And after he ejaculated, he left?
Shortly thereafter.
Your Honor, may I approach? Ms. Arias, I want to show you what has been marked as Exhibits 393 and 394. Be so kind as to take a look at those. Do you recognize those?
Yes.
What are those pictures of?
Those are pictures of Travis's erection.
And when did you, or how did you come into possession of these photos?
They were sent to me
How?
via his phone.
Via a text message or picture message?
Picture message.
Okay.
His phone and my phone.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibits 393 and 394.
Judge, lack of foundation, if we could get a date on it.
Sustained?
Ms. Arias, would you like to see the photos again in terms of the day that they were received?
I think I remember the day.
Well, let me have you take a look then and see if you can tell us the day that they were received. Do you recall now?
Yes.
Does that date on the photo reflect the date that you received it?
Yes, that would have been a Saturday.
And this was before he came to your home in Palm Desert?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would again move to admit Exhibits 393 and 394.
Again, what's the date? Somebody could just announce it.
But Jodi, what day was it that you received them?
It was November 11th, 2006.
I'm sorry.
I can look at it. The exhibit. No objection.
393 and 394 are admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, you said this came to you via phone message. Is this something that you had solicited from him?
Not directly. I didn't expect a photograph, but we were flirting.
You were what?
Flirting?
That is a picture of his erection that he sent you, is that right?
Yes.
And you were saying you were flirting. What do you mean by flirting?
I was in Anaheim, at the Anaheim Grove, and I was at a Super Saturday for that area. And I was listening to the speakers, and we began to text, and we were just text messaging back and forth. It turned flirty, and then it turned sexual, and it went on for hours, actually. Just back and forth, just trying to be witty and top each other's last comments.
And in that regard, in order to top your last comment, he sent you this picture?
That actually culminated at the restaurant after we left the Grove. He wasn't there, he was in Mesa. I was with other people. So we were at the restaurant when my phone beeped. I hadn't received pictures on that phone before. So when I showed I had a message from him, and I opened it and I couldn't find it. And then I realized it was a file that I don't know if I had to open it or go into a different folder to see it, and then I realized what it was. And I shut my phone really quick. It was a flip phone.
And moving, just showing you for the record, 393. And then 394. It appears these are different photos. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, they're different.
So he sent you 2 photos that day?
Yes.
Okay.
Consecutively.
All right. Ms. Arias, when he did that, was he also requesting that you reciprocate with any photos?
Yes.
Did you reciprocate with photos?
No, not that day.
Why not?
I was at a restaurant, and I don't know how to really explain it without saying.
Did you want to reciprocate?
No, I didn't, but I knew he wanted to, so I was a little bit conflicted, but I said no.
How did he react to your refusal to send him a picture?
He felt it should be fair, kind of like that. Like, he didn't say that, but he had been requesting photos for a while at this point, and
what was he requesting photos of?
naked pictures.
Of you?
Yes.
Of particular body parts, or Did he make any specific requests?
No, he didn't specify body parts that I remember.
Okay. Up to the point in time when you received these pictures of his erection, you had not sent him any pictures, is that right?
Yes.
After the point in time, and I don't want to get too far down the road in the story, but after the point in time that he sent you those pictures, did you then feel a level of guilt for not reciprocating?
Yes, I didn't want to disappoint him. I felt like I had disappointed him. And he seemed very disappointed. Anyway.
Okay. Now, I want to spend some time talking about, did you say your baptism took place on November 26th of 2006, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. We heard a little bit from Mr. Freeman about the process, but I want to hear about what you went through leading up to it, okay? Would like to discuss that now?
Okay.
Do you remember a particular point in time, maybe a month, a year, that you decided you wanted to join the Mormon faith?
It was a series of experiences that brought me to make that decision ultimately.
Describe for us what you mean by series of experiences.
Well, the first week the missionaries came, they invited me to church that following Sunday. This time I'd actually slept, so I was able to pay attention to what was being said. And someone was giving a talk, and what that person said was very impactful and something that I had not heard other Christians embrace before, but it was something that I personally embraced. And I liked
what was that, if you recall?
Am I allowed to say what he said?
Well, just tell us the general subject matter of.
It was an acceptance and a tolerance of all faiths in the world, basically.
And you found that aspect of the Mormon faith to be in line with your own personal beliefs, right?
Yes.
Okay. Describe for us then, you were talking about these experiences, a series of experiences. What other experiences led you to believe or led you to choose to be baptized into the Mormon faith?
Travis and I talked about the church a lot, and I asked him any questions I had. I asked the missionaries also, but I was able to ask Travis a few more questions on a personal level. And not necessarily a sexual level, but just things that I wasn't comfortable asking two 20-year-old guys. So the more that I discovered about the church, the more I realized that it did not conflict with my beliefs, and it was in alignment with a lot of the values that I had, and especially the family values and the emphasis they place on families and marriage and the importance thereof. And I didn't like the no coffee rule. I couldn't imagine giving up coffee at that point. I drank it every morning and sometimes in the evenings. But that was the only thing that bothered me. There was no alcohol, but I wasn't really a drinker anyway, so that didn't bother me. But just everything seemed to line up for me as far as my beliefs and the lifestyle that I was interested in leading.
Once you made this decision internally in terms of wanting to be baptized, how did you move from that point in time to November 26th when you were actually baptized? Was there a process you went through with the church? Could you just kind of explain that to us?
Yes, the missionaries finally asked me if I was ready to be baptized, and I told them yes. So they set up an interview with another young man, I think he was an elder, and he asked me a series of questions. It's like an interview that you have right before you're baptized to see if you're ready to be baptized.
And when did this interview, if you know the date, fine. If not, relative to when you were baptized, when did this interview take place?
It was sometime in November, but I don't remember the exact time. It was close to my baptism date.
Okay. As it relates, well, let me ask you this. What sort of subjects what sort of questions were you asked? What were the subject matter of the questions that you were asked during this pre-baptismal interview?
So long ago, I don't remember the exact questions, but they asked questions about your belief in Jesus Christ and the veracity of the Book of Mormon, and about your belief in Joseph Smith being a prophet of God, and if you have been obeying the word of wisdom, which is the coffee and tea, etc., and if you've been obeying the law of chastity, which to my understanding at that time was, I guess, different.
Let me ask you about that. You said you were asked if you are obeying the law of chastity, right? You were asked that during the interview?
Yes.
Is that, okay. And your understanding of the law of chastity was abstaining from penile vaginal intercourse. That's what your understanding was, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when you were asked that question, based on your understanding, you believe that you were indeed in line with the vow of chastity. Is that accurate?
Yes. In a technical sense, I believed I was.
Okay. And that belief was based on the things that Mr. Alexander was telling you?
Yes.
So after this interview, what happened? Are you approved to be baptized? What is the process from that point on?
I wasn't approved right away because I told the person that Daryl still lived in the house, and so he said he'd have to check since he was an ex-boyfriend and he's the opposite sex, and that's discouraged in the church to live under the same roof as somebody of the opposite sex who's not family or not your spouse. So he checked, and then I interviewed, I think, with another, I think it was the branch president, just to check, and he wanted to make sure that we were in separate bedrooms and that wasn't going to be an ongoing living situation, and Daryl had plans to move in about another week and a half or 2 weeks back to Monterey. So we were going to postpone the baptism, but the branch president said that he feels that the baptism should go forward as scheduled instead of postponing it till after Daryl moved.
Okay. And it was scheduled for the 26th? Was that the original day it was scheduled for?
Yes.
Okay. So you get this approval, I guess. How many days beforehand do you get the approval versus the day you're actually baptized?
I would say roughly a week. I don't remember exactly. It was close to the date.
Okay. So you were aware of your impending baptism when Mr. Alexander came to visit you at your home?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe I was.
Okay. Who baptized you into the Mormon faith?
Travis baptized me.
How was that decision made that he was to be the person to baptize you?
Well, when I decided I was going to get baptized, there was a period in early November, I think, or maybe it was mid-November. Travis had been a little more distant again, so I was kind of questioning where we were going with things on that I still wanted to get baptized. And when I asked the missionaries, well, when they had told me asked me if I was ready, and I told them yes, I asked if his name was Elder Jensen. I asked if he would do it, because he had, second to Travis, he had taught me so much about the church at that point. And he had said that it's better.
It's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Rephrase the question.
Did he accept your invitation to baptize you?
He did. No, he didn't accept it. He didn't.
Objection, that may also.
Sustained.
To your understanding, why not?
I don't recall exactly what he said, but he encouraged me to find somebody.
Hearsay. She doesn't recall exactly what he said.
Overall, you may answer.
I remember the essence of it, and that was that he encouraged me to find somebody, not him or his partner, not one of the missionaries.
Apart from those individuals and Mr. Alexander, at this point in time, did you have a close relationship with any other members of the church that would have the ability to baptize you?
Not a close relationship. I had acquaintances, and nobody really in that area, except the small branch. I didn't hang out with them too much at that point, so not really.
Okay. So how did you then come to the point in time that you decided that you wanted Travis to baptize you?
He was the only other person I could think of. And he was the person that I was initially thinking of also. So I decided to go ahead and, well, he asked me first if I had decided whether or not I was going to be baptized. And I told him yes, and he said, that's great.
Objection, hearsay is the conversation.
Sorry.
Mr. Alexander was happy to learn that you were being baptized.
He was happy to learn that, yes.
Did you then invite him to baptize you?
Yes.
Do you recall when you made that invitation?
It would have been November. I don't remember the exact date.
Did this happen in person or did this happen over the telephone?
It was over the phone.
Okay. Where did your baptism take place?
In Palm Desert.
What was involved? Well, just describe for us your baptism. Is it just you and Mr. Alexander, or are there other people involved?
No, many people were invited. I think it's open to anyone attending, especially church members. Non-members are encouraged to attend also. Travis, I don't remember if he invited them or if I invited them, but the Hugheses came out. A few other people in the business that were church members came to my baptism.
Did you invite your family?
No, they lived 11, 12 hours away, so I didn't. I told them.
Objection, hearsay was the question. She was asked whether she invited them.
Sustained.
You didn't invite them. Were you under the impression that they wouldn't have an interest in being there?
Well, I mean, if they could teleport there, they'd be there, but they certainly wouldn't make the effort to come out there for that event.
Prior to you being baptized, had your family expressed misgivings about you joining the church?
Yes.
We say your family. Are we talking about the immediate family, your parents, your grandparents, and your brothers and sisters?
Yes, aunts, parents, siblings, and friends.
So pretty much everyone in your, from what you're telling us, it sounds like pretty much everyone in your immediate circle discouraged you from joining the church.
Yes.
Okay. Did you invite Mr. Brewer to attend?
Yes.
Did he attend?
No.
So tell us what, you mentioned the ceremony. How did you feel that day knowing that you were going to be baptized before the ceremony?
I was a little nervous because I didn't know what the process entailed, but I was excited.
And how was tell us what occurred during your ceremony.
Well, we had chairs set up and a small podium in another room, not in the main chapel. But it's still at the church building. And people took their seats. There were some hymns. Well, we opened with a prayer. There were some hymns that we sang and a few talks that were given on a few different subjects. And I don't remember if another hymn was sang, but then I was led into the font. I went into the back, and then Travis was already in the font.
You said the font. What is the font?
The best I can describe it is a very big, like a giant bathtub, but filled with water about waist level when you're standing up.
Okay. And you said Mr. Alexander was back there. What takes place when you go towards the font?
Well, before entering the font, I changed into an all-white, kind of like a jumpsuit. And then there's some steps that lead into the font.
And what happens when you go into the font?
It was a lot like Dan described. You walk up and Travis held his hand up and said some kind of invocation or prayer or blessing. I don't know what it's called. He made a declaration, so to speak, and then I was dipped into the water and came back up.
And how did it feel for you to be baptized? Were you elated? Did you feel very spiritual? Can you describe that feeling?
It was a very peaceful feeling.
Now, after the official baptism, the ritual you just talked about, after that is over, are there more services? Is there a reception? For those of us who aren't familiar, could you please just kind of take us through that experience?
Are you talking about what happens after the baptism?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I went back into the designated area, I guess, for the ladies, where they can change. I was changing into my clothes. Sky Hughes came into that area to check on me. After that, we went back into the main area where everybody was still hanging out and just talking about whatever, just plans for the week, things like that. I think we might have closed with a prayer, but I don't remember. I just remember everything sort of dispersing shortly after I was out of the water.
Okay. And how did you get back home that day?
That day, I drove.
Okay. Did you drive by yourself?
No, Travis came with me.
Okay. Tell us what happened when you got back to the house.
We got back to the house. His car was parked at my house, so we took my car to church. So we got back to the house, went inside, and we hugged. Words were exchanged.
What happened after you hugged and words were exchanged?
We began to kiss, and things got intimate again.
Was that place of intimacy a place you were thinking about going on this spiritual day?
Not how it ultimately happened, no.
What do you mean, how it ultimately happened? Describe for us what happened after you and Mr. Alexander started kissing that day.
Well, we were in my bedroom. We were not on the bed, but we were standing next to it. And we were kissing. And I was in my church clothes. He was in his church clothes. The kissing got more passionate, more intense, and then he spun me around. And he bent me over the bed, and he was just on top of me. I didn't think anything was, but he was just going to keep kissing me.
What happened when he bent you over the bed? Were you face down on the bed or face up?
I was face down. My head was turned to the side.
And what happened?
His hands were wandering, and he lifted up my skirt, and he pulled down my underwear, and he was pressing against me,
What do you mean pressing against you?
his whole body.
Did he have an erection?
I could feel an erection.
And what happened next?
He unzipped his pants, and I guess he pulled it down. I didn't see, but he began to have anal sex with me, and
You said that he had anal sex with you. Based on what you said before, this wasn't something that you were expecting to happen.
no, not that night.
Is this something that you wanted to happen?
Well, I can't say I wanted to, but I didn't stop him.
When he entered you, you said you didn't stop him. Did you say anything? Did you tell him no?
No,
Was it pleasurable for you physically?
at that time it was painful, somewhat.
Given that it was painful, why didn't you tell him no?
Eventually I did. I probably would have just let him continue, but it became too painful.
Why do you say you probably just would have let him continue?
Because I knew that is what he had been wanting for a while, and I trusted him. I had a lot of trust, and I just went with what he was, with his agenda, I guess I could say.
This agenda you describe him having and this pain you were experiencing, did this go on for several minutes before you told him no?
I don't think it went on too long, not several minutes, maybe a few.
And from what you're telling us, it sounds like the only reason that you told him no or told him to stop was the pain, not your lack of interest in this activity. Is that right?
That's pretty accurate. I mean, I wasn't looking forward to it, but definitely the pain, I had to have him stop. Otherwise, I probably would have continued.
Otherwise what?
I probably would have continued if it weren't for that.
Okay. After he stopped, was that the end of the intimacy that day?
He finished by ejaculating on my back or somewhere, like on me. And then we were finished. And then shortly, I think we parted ways. We kissed and embraced, and he left.
After this encounter on this spiritual day, how did you feel about yourself?
After he left, shortly after he left, I didn't feel very good. I kind of felt like a used piece of toilet paper. I don't know, I didn't continue feeling that way, just shortly thereafter. For a little while I did.
Then in late November of 2006, after your baptism, does Mr. Alexander stay in Palm Desert, to your knowledge, or does he go back?
He drove back to Mesa, to my knowledge.
Okay. You need a moment?
No. Thank you.
After this incident on the 26th, when was the next time you spoke with Mr. Alexander?
I can't remember if it was that night or the next night, but it was shortly after that.
Did the subject of the encounter, the anal sex you just described, did that come up in your conversations?
He wrote me a letter about it. We didn't discuss it directly on the phone. We had discussed things of that nature in the past.
Did you ever voice your displeasure with the incident to him?
Only when I said,
Objection, hearsay, what she said.
She's the declarant judge.
Overruled, you may answer.
I kind of just said through clenched teeth, stop, 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 and he stopped. So I think he got the impression that it was not pleasurable at that point, but I never said anything about it after that of a negative nature.
So you never advised him that you felt like, as I think you said, a used piece of toilet paper. You never advised him that?
I wouldn't have told him that.
You would not have? Is that what you
No.
said? Why not?
Because I don't think that would have made him feel very good.
How about how you felt?
I was dealing with that, you know.
Okay. So after this incident, you say you talked to him. Are you talking to him then again on a near daily basis or near nightly basis?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you say.
Yes.
And you mentioned these phone calls getting progressively later and later. What time are we talking about a majority of these phone calls taking place?
He almost stopped calling me completely before 11 p.m. Usually it was closer to midnight, and sometimes it was as late as 3 a.m. He would call and we would talk.
These talks now, you mentioned in the past that they were of a spiritual nature, a personal nature, and a sexual nature. Did that pattern persist in throughout November? Subsequent, I
Yes.
should say, November, December, subsequent to this incident.
Yeah, new subject matters were incorporated regarding our futures, things like that. But for the most part, that same kind of thing continued.
Well, let me ask you this. You say regarding the future. Did that future, was that related to the relationship prospects between yourself and Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Prior to, let's even make it specific to November 26th, were you and Travis boyfriend and girlfriend?
No, we were not.
When did you, for the sake of discussion now, when did you become boyfriend and girlfriend?
We became boyfriend, girlfriend. Well, we didn't term it that, but we became, not initially, we became exclusive, to my understanding, on February 2nd, 2007.
Okay. So it was a good 2-3 months later after this incident before you became exclusive or boyfriend and girlfriend? What,
Yes.
okay. Now, as it relates to these times, and I want to back up a little bit, when you were in public with Mr. Alexander prior to November 26th, did you act publicly as if you were boyfriend and girlfriend?
No, not in public.
What about during the trip to Ehrenberg? I mean, were you holding hands? Did you have your arm around each other? Was that different than most of the other times?
Inside the motel room, definitely. Inside the truck stop, the restaurant adjoins this mini mart, and he grabbed my butt there. There were some men standing by, and he did that right in front of them. And other than that, I think he wasn't too affectionate at Sizzler. I don't really remember, but he was very affectionate inside the motel room while we were being physical.
Okay. As you were having this, what was the beginnings of a sexual relationship, you've had these few sexual encounters. Were you under the impression that this was something that was supposed to be kept a secret?
I got that impression from different things, different hints and clues and things that his friend said.
Okay. Would that be, without directly saying what they're saying, would that be directly related to the vow of chastity and Travis's, the belief that Travis was adhering to it?
I don't know. I believed that we were adhering to it.
Okay.
It was more, sorry.
So even at the point in time when you had this unwanted anal sex, you believed you were complying with the vow of chastity?
By definition. It didn't really feel that way, but by definition I did believe that.
In that regard, then, there must have been some reason why you felt like you couldn't tell anybody about these encounters, right?
Yes.
And what was that reason?
I don't typically talk about my sex life with people. That was pretty much the simple reason.
Did Mr. Alexander know that?
He knew I was discreet. I didn't reveal anything about Daryl.
Okay. Did he ask?
In the beginning, he joked about it, but he didn't press for too many details. I didn't give him any.
Okay. So after November 26th, and you're still living in Palm Desert, right?
Yes.
And Travis is still living in Mesa, right?
Yes.
Okay. And it sounds to me like in this point in time in the story, you hadn't come to visit him in Mesa. Is that correct?
Yes, I had never been to Arizona.
Okay. Let's talk about then the next time you saw Mr. Alexander. When was that?
It was about, it was the Friday following the Sunday I was baptized.
And where did that meeting take place?
At his house.
His house in Mesa?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the plan? Were you coming out there for a weekend? Were you coming out there for a long time? What was the idea, the purpose of the visit?
There was another regional event happening, a Super Saturday in Phoenix, with a special guest speaker that was flying in. It was really big in the company. So a ton of people were carpooling, caravanning out from California, and I was part of the caravan. And we all, I think there were 3 or 4 vehicles. They were coming from Paris, California, Moreno Valley, Murrieta, other Southern California towns, and Palm Desert is on the way, so that was the last stop where I met them at Carl's Jr., and we all got on the road and drove together for the most of the drive.
Okay. When you, in this event in Mesa, I'm assuming this wasn't at Mr. Alexander's home, is that right?
The event?
Yeah.
No, it was in Phoenix.
Okay. So you carpool with these people from California. You get to this meeting in Phoenix. Is this where you see Mr. Alexander at this meeting?
No, we went to his house first on Friday night. The event was Saturday morning.
Okay. You say we. Who was we?
Me and... Do you want me to name names?
Well, no, that's okay. Just some of the people you were carpooling with?
Yes, his friends and people that were in the company.
What was the purpose of going to Mr. Alexander's house? Were you staying there? Could you just describe that for us?
Yes, a bunch of people from out of state were coming to his house, and we were all going to crash there.
Okay. And what were the sleeping arrangements to be?
Well, the sleeping arrangements after we got there, we were determining those things.
Well, let me ask you this. Prior to, obviously, Mr. Alexander knew you were coming out to this event, right?
Yes.
Did he give any indications to you that while you were in Mesa, and how many days was this going to be?
It's Saturday, and we would leave Sunday.
Okay.
Well, we arrived Friday night.
Okay. So while you were in Mesa for this 3-day weekend, I guess, did he give you any indication that he wanted to engage or have some sort of sexual interaction with you?
No, it was just the opposite.
Okay. Told you he didn't?
Yes.
Okay. So tell us about that weekend then. It was yourself and others. Did you wind up having a sexual encounter with Mr. Alexander that weekend?
No, he joked about oral sex, giving him, but he was concerned about his ex-girlfriend there, and he didn't want us to be affectionate in front of her.
And this ex-girlfriend, we heard from a girl by the name of Lisa, then by the name of Lisa Andrews. Is that the girlfriend we're talking about?
No, Lisa Andrews came afterward. This was a girlfriend prior to
Okay.
Lisa.
All right. And what was her name?
Deanna.
So he expressed to you concern that Deanna would be jealous.
He didn't say jealous.
Did he express misgivings about how the two of you were to act in front of Deanna?
Yes, he felt he needed to warn me.
Warn you that what?
We're going to take the noon recess at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the jury room at 1:25. Please remember the admonition. Have a nice lunch. You are excused. Please be seated. The record will show the jury has left the courtroom. Yes, Ms. Arias, you may step down. Let's address the last objection. Mr. Martinez.
She was going to talk about what Mr. Alexander told her, and that's hearsay.
You know, hearsay has a much more complex definition than just the fact that somebody comes out of something comes out of someone else's mouth. That does not hearsay make. It has to be an assertion, intended as an assertion by the declarant that is offered for the truth of the matter asserted. This goes to Ms. Arias' state of mind as it relates to how she was to act in front of this girlfriend, Deanna. It goes to the effect of the listener. I don't even think it's hearsay because it's not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. As to the reasons why that Mr. Alexander was concerned about his conduct in front of Ms. Reed, that we're not going to the truth of the matter, that the effect of how this affected Ms. Arias' conduct and the behavior that weekend.
But as we discussed at the bench yesterday, if you can redirect her by rephrasing the question, that is preferable. We'll limit the number of bench conferences we need to have. So just rephrase the question.
Sure.
When the jury returns. All right. Mr. Nerman, you wanted to make a record? Did you want to do that now?
Well, yes, Your Honor, that's fine, but I believe I'd like to have the Sheriff's Office begin by addressing what they're requesting, and then so I can make my objection to it.
All right. Mr. Dutcher, on behalf of the Sheriff.
Good morning, Judge. Scott Dutcher on behalf of Sheriff Arpaio. Come to the Sheriff's attention, there have been some conferences in chambers in a non-secure area of the courthouse with Ms. Arias present, and that's not something the Sheriff permits. After we all discussed this morning before court began, I did explore some other options with the Sheriff's Office, and I know the defense has some concerns, and this may be an option if everyone wants this. If there are short conferences as lieu of having everyone clear the courtroom, right over here is a secure area, and there aren't chairs. I don't know if we can get some chairs, but if it's a short conference, we can all enter this area of the courthouse, which is a secure area of the jail, and everyone can, I guess, say whatever they need to say. I don't know if that's an option that everyone wants, but that or the courtroom are the only options available, Judge. It is a security issue to have inmates in unsecure areas of the jail, and that's not something the Sheriff allows for any inmate, including Ms. Arias.
All right. And you wanted to make a record on that, Mr. Nerman?
Judge, I just want to recite, at least, obviously we know the Sixth Amendment guarantees my client's right to be present at all vital stages of these proceedings, and any denial of that would be a denial of due process and reason for mistrial. In this regard, obviously, based on whatever the reasons were when we were asking to do this, whatever party was, both parties have asked, and the court has understood that under those circumstances, with not going into what they are, that those were important. There were reasons for it. That is why some of those records have been sealed. So Judge, I believe that, at least for the record, and our assertion is that regardless, and I'm not trying to get in a dispute with the Sheriff's Office, but Ms. Arias is entitled to do that. I don't know about the viability from a logistics standpoint of what the Sheriff's Office is suggesting, but I just want to make it clear for the record that we're asserting that she has an absolute right to be present, and if that needs to be facilitated in some way, either through clearing the courtroom or alternative means, and that is the basis of our assertion, and we will not waver on that point. If it gets more contentious in that regard, I would be asking for motions from the Sheriff's Office because this is such an important right.
All right, the court will make the best determination it can in any given circumstance, including clearing the courtroom if necessary to accommodate a defense request or a confidential meeting. All right, anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, for lunch.